Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. This week we are going over the February 2018 stats released by Quar. So, February 2018, what do we think about it? Overall, it was a pretty standard February, I'd say. So, let's start by saying that last year, February, March, April 2017, those were some of the craziest months that KW has ever seen. So, when we look at the stats, we have to consider that going into 2018, we're starting to see things fall back in line with the 10-year average. There is a shortage of supply, but not nearly to the degree that we saw last year. Last year at this time, we saw detached homes at around 463, 465 on average for a sale price, and now we're up to 478, really, but there were a lot of ebbs and flows in there as well. Between last February and this February, we saw average home prices jump up as high as 493 and as low as 430. And so what we're seeing is that, yeah, we have an increase of around 15,000 on the average sale price, but there's been a lot of movement in the last year. So it's still climbing, and it's hard to compare really to the stats from last year because of the year that we did have in 2017. With regards to the detached home market, we've seen about 212 transactions in the month of February, and on the whole, they're up around 5% from where they were last year. So the average detached home right now is sitting around 577,000, up from around 550 where they were last year. So on the one hand, we have detached homes, which are up around 5%. On the complete other end of the spectrum, we've got the apartment-style condos. Usually less demand around those in KW, but even those have jumped 7% from last year, and they are now up to an average of around 265. The largest increase that we saw from last year is townhomes, up around 14% from where they were last year. Townhomes and semis are sitting at 385 and 390-ish respectively. And as I've said many times before, those two are often pretty neck and neck. They hit similar demographics. There aren't a ton of them out there hitting the markets. In total for townhomes, there were around 17 transactions for freeholds. For semi-detached homes, we're looking at around 25 transactions in total. Compared to the 212 that we had with detached, you can see that it is a smaller segment of the market, but those two, semis and townhomes, tend to be pretty close in value. We are still seeing pretty low supply compared to our 10-year average. Over the last 10 years in February, we've been sitting a little over 1,400 in terms of listings, active listings on the market. That's the supply, the properties you get to choose from. This year in January, we're sitting at 667. With this huge influx of buyers that we've seen either from Toronto or internationally, it's been very, very difficult to accommodate all those buyers, and that influx of demand and the lack of supply have been the two things that have been driving these prices up month over month, year over year. Kitchener-Waterloo continues to be a very, very hot market in Southern Ontario. It's in the news a lot. There are more and more companies coming out here. It seems like every month there's another big name that's being dropped, and developers have been buying very, very actively. So what we're going to expect to see over the next few years is a ton more development, which is going to continue to draw the demand and draw the interest to our cities. So for the people on the buying side, what do you need to do? If you're looking at something in a competitive price point, anywhere from $350 to $500 at this point, you'd better get your ducks in a row. Get your financing all figured out. Start to get your plan in place for how you're going to go about looking for properties, how you're going to go about competing for properties when things come. As we enter the spring, typically we'll see a few more listings hit the market, a little bit more supply, but we also see a huge influx of demand at that time. On the selling side, if you're looking at listing going into the spring market, you have to be prepared to be competing or having your home compete with your neighbors in your neighborhood and those other properties that might show really, really well. One of the most common phrases that I hear on the buying and selling side is, I'm gonna wait for spring. So it's on its way right now. And on both sides, we're gonna see a little bit more competition. If your home doesn't show very well, or you're not sure if it's maybe a little outdated or could use a little love, let me know. I'd love to come by and help point you in the right direction in terms of some of those projects. Because when there is a lot of supply like that, it's really, really important that you're competitive with some of those other properties that will show very. If you have any questions at all about any of the stats that I've discussed here today or want any clarification, feel free to give me a shout, shoot me a message on social media or comment on the video, and I'd love to help you. Thanks for tuning in this week, guys. I'll see you next Friday.